Greetings, everyone. It is I, Phoenix, and welcome to Back to Ashes. To the elite members, thank you for your kind and dedicated support. I cannot put into words how much I'm grateful to have you with us. With that being said, it is now time to go back to ashes, for once we arise from the ashes, we are a bigger, brighter, stronger, and a happier person every day. Sit back, relax, kick back, grab a snack, or tuck in to get warm, and prepare for your dose of vocal melatonin entitled True Scary Stories. Right after this intro, there will be an ad. I'll read the first story, there will be an ad. And after that, there will be no more ads within this video. I grew up in the shadow corners of Fairfield, California, in a house that never knew the warmth of Sunday hymns. My family, my mother, father, sister, Lupe, and I, weren't the kind of kneel in pews or clutch prayer beads. Church was a place we visited only when death demanded it, a cold formality of funerals. God was a stranger to me, and the Bible's words were as distant as the stars. I look back on my childhood and see a void where faith might have rooted, a void that made me vulnerable to the darkness that crept into my life. What I'm about to tell you is no fiction, though I really wished it was. It's a story my mother shared with me, one I've pieced together with my own research into the Satanic Bible, and it's a tale that still makes my skin crawl, as if something unseen is watching and waiting. It was Christmas, December 1989. I was 20, young and restless, living in a world that felt too small for my ambitions. That night, after a modest dinner and the ritual of opening Secret Santa gifts, my cousins, Estella, Maria, Martha, my brother, Arthur, my sister, Lupe, our friend who hosted the party, and I decided to escape the monotony of family gatherings for a Christmas party at a friend's house. The air was thick with laughter and the clink of glasses, but as the night wound down, a shadow fell over our revelry. Estella, distraught, realized her new expensive watch, a Secret Santa gift from her sister Martha, was missing. It had vanished in the span of hours, as if the night itself had swallowed it. Martha, with a strange glint in her eye, exclaimed she had a solution. "Don't worry," she said, her voice low, almost conspiratorial. "I have a Ouija board in the car. We can use it to find the watch." Her words hung in the air, heavy with an unspoken promise. I'd never seen a Ouija board before, never touched one, but the idea sent a shiver down my spine. Not of fear, not yet, but of curiosity tinged with something darker. We retrieved the board, a worn wooden slab etched with letters and numbers, its surface gleaming faintly under the dim streetlights. The seven of us, me, Estelle, Maria, Martha, Arthur, Lupe, and our friend, locked ourselves in the small room, the kind where secrets fester. We lit candles, their flames flickering like nervous eyes, and gathered around the board. Someone clutched a notepad and pen, ready to transcribe whatever the spirits might whisper. "Where's Estelle's watch?" Martha asked, her fingers resting lightly on the planchette. The room seemed to hold its breath. The planchette twitched, then slid with purpose, spelling out the make, model, and color of a vehicle parked outside. A chill crept into my bones, not from the cold, but from the precision of it. We rushed outside, our footsteps echoing in the silent night, and there, behind the tire of a car, matching the broad description, lay the watch, glinting like a taunt. My heart pounded, not with relief, but with a creeping unease. This was no parlor trick. Something had answered us. We returned to the board. emboldened by its accuracy. The candles burned lower, casting long shadows that danced on the walls. We asked the cliche questions about love, about the future, our voices tinged with nervous laughter. But the air grew thicker, the room smaller, as if the walls were closing in. Nothing evil happened that night, or so I told myself. But the board had planted a seed, one that would grow into something monstrous. Weeks later, Martha's mother discovered her daughter's Ouija board. Her face paled, her voice trembled with conviction as she declared it evil, a conduit for malevolent forces. She demanded Martha destroyed it, but I, foolish and enthralled, asked to take it instead. Martha agreed, and I carried the board home. Its weight more physical. At my mother's house, Lupe and I would stay up late, the board between us, its letters glowing faintly in the moonlight. We whispered to it, half expecting nothing, half hoping for something. When I became pregnant with my first child, I moved into my own apartment, the board tucked under my arm like a forbidden relic. That's when the real darkness began. I played alone at first, after long days at work, the board my only companion in the quiet apartment. The planchette moved smoothly, answering my questions with an eerie familiarity. When my niece, Isabel, moved in from Sacramento, she joined me, and the board became our obsession. Every night, after dinner and showers, we'd sit cross-legged on the floor, the candles casting our shadows like specters. The board spoke, and we listened, captivated by its promises. It claimed to be my father, who had died when I was 11. I wanted to believe it. God, how I missed it. The board knew things only he could know. Don't kill the bees, it spelled out. A secret from my childhood, when I'd swatted bees on his honey farm. A sin no one else knew. It told Isabel it loved her singing, a detail that rang true, pulling at my heartstrings. I was convinced it was him, my father, reaching out from beyond. But the board's warmth was a lie. By the first month of our nightly rituals, the planchette began to move without our touch, gliding across the board with a will of its own. Objects in the apartment shifted, perfume bottles, keys, books, appearing in the center of my bed as if placed by an unseen hand. When we stepped outside, crows descended in black, shrieking flocks, their talons grazing our hair, their eyes glinting with malice. At night, moans and groans filled the air, not from neighbors, but from the walls themselves, as if the apartment were alive and in pain. Fireballs, small and ghostly, floated down the hallway, shrinking as they drifted, vanishing before they hit the floor. My stomach turned with dread, but I couldn't stop. The board had me in its grip. Then came the night that broke me. The board's tone shifted, its words no longer gentle. It promised wealth, the winning lottery numbers, a life of ease, but at a price. Kill someone, it demanded, the planchette jerking violently. My blood ran cold. This wasn't my father. This was something else, something ancient and cruel. Isabel and I refused, our voices trembling, but the board pressed, relentless, its words dripping with menace. Who are you? We demanded, over and over. It evaded, offering vague answers, until finally it spoke of a person who had drowned in Lake Berry Sea years ago. We didn't believe it. The lies were piling up, each one heavier than the last. "Tell us who you really are," I whispered, my voice barely audible. The planchette paused, then spelled out a name that made the air grow thick. Mammon. I didn't know the name, but it felt like a weight on my chest, a name that carried centuries of greed and corruption. I called my sister Maria, newly devout, and poured out the story. She laughed, thinking it a prank, but I begged her to believe me. "Ask it where Raymond is," she said, referring to our brother. A secret only she and our mother knew. The board answered instantly. Contra Costa County Jail. The truth of it hit like a blow. Raymond was there, and no one else could have known. Maria called her mother-in-law, a woman steeped in scripture. Minutes later, my phone rang. "Stop playing with that board," she said, her voice sharp with fear. "Mammon is a demon, a prince of hell. Get rid of it now." My hand shook as I hung up. Isabel and I swore never to touch the board again, but its presence lingered like a curse. I couldn't bring myself to destroy it. Stories of Ouija boards returning after being thrown away haunted me. Instead, I wrapped it in a plastic bag and hid it in my closet, hoping to contain its power. But the apartment was no longer mine. The moans grew louder, the fireballs more frequent, the crows more aggressive. Belongings continued to move, appearing in places that defied logic. 6 months later, as I prepared to move out, my sister's brother-in-law helped me pack. He found the board in the closet and asked to keep it, his eyes bright with curiosity. I didn't warn him. I couldn't. I just nodded, my voice caught in my throat, and handed it over, knowing I was passing on a darkness I could never see. The board was gone, but its shadow remains. Even now, I feel it watching, waiting for me to slip, to invite it back. The air grows heavy sometimes, and I swear I hear the faint scrape of a planchette moving in the dark. I live in a small Dutch village, a postcard kind of place. Quiet streets lined with neat houses, a church bell that rings like a heartbeat in the still air. The sort of town that tricks you into believing you're safe. But safety is a story we tell ourselves so we can sleep at night. I learned that 3 weeks ago. The village sits at the edge of a forest that feels older than the earth itself. A sprawl of dune-like hills, skeletal trees, and trails that snake into nowhere. Deep inside that labyrinth is a place my friends and I call Nature Spot. It isn't much, it's just a clearing with a wooden bridge that stretches over black water to a small island. In summer, it's green and alive. In winter, it's a corpse, bare, wet, and ugly. A place no one sane would go when the cold strips everything down to bone. But that night, I went. It was Friday, midnight. My friends had bailed like always. No big deal. Sometimes I like being alone. There's something intoxicating about it. The dead hush of the forest, the sky sagging low like it wants to crush you. That uneasy thrill when the dark wraps itself around you and whispers, anything could happen. I cranked my music loud enough to rattle my skull, slipped my knife into my pocket, a habit more than a plan, and set off. The forest swallowed me whole, the path with a vein of black mud, the trees pressing closer like ribs around a heart. Every breath stinged in the cold. When the bridge appeared, it looked wrong. Too thin, too old. Its warped planks gleamed wet in the moonlight, and the rails leaned inward like broken arms. Beyond it, the island crouched in the stagnant water, a clod of earth crowned by a single twisted tree. We called it the witch tree. Its branches writhed upward like a thing in pain, claws etched against the starless sky. I stopped, slid my headphones down. Silence. The kind that eats sound alive. No wind, no water moving. Just a hush that felt aware. I waited. 1 minute, 2, nothing. I stepped onto the bridge. It groaned under me like a dying animal, the cranes bowing deep enough to glimpse the black below. The water rippled without reason, like something had stirred just out of sight. My chest tightened, but I kept moving. When I hit the island, the earth sucked at my boots, the mud cold enough to burn. My breath ghosted white in front of me as I walked toward the witch tree, rolling a joint between trembling fingers. That's when I saw him. At first, I thought it was a trick of the dark, a shape carved from shadow. Then the moon slid free of a ragged cloud, and I saw skin. A man, naked, standing on a fallen log like a crucifix carved in meat. His arms were stretched to a perfect T, head tilted just enough to show the hollow curve of his neck. His mouth hung open, not like somebody breathing, but like someone screaming in silence. And his eyes? Oh, Christ, his eyes were wrong. Black and glossy like holes punched through to somewhere else. I froze. My mind locked up, throat sealing shut. Every cell screamed, move. But I couldn't. I wasn't looking at a man. I was looking at something the world didn't have words for. Then the terror hit me. I stumbled back, ripping my headphones off, heart battering my ribs. A voice cracked out before I could stop it. Hey, what goes ye? The word sounded small, brittle in the swallowing dark. My fingers fumbled for my knife, slippery with sweat. My breath came in knives. I backed toward the bridge, eyes locked on him, trying to look bigger, meaner, anything but prey. I see you. I've got a knife. Calm down. My voice was shaking, but I pushed it out hard, like it could keep me alive. He didn't flinch, didn't blink, didn't even breathe. Then, slow as rot, his arms dropped, and he started walking. The sound came first, the bridge screaming under weight. I spun, and there he was, stepping out of the trees, naked and slick, moonlight crawling over his skin like oil. His arms lifted again, straight up this time, fingers curled like claws. His head lolled back, jaw yawning wider than a jaw should go. Too wide, too wrong. He walked onto the bridge, my hands on the rails. No hesitation. The planks bucked under him. The whole structure swung like a drum, but he didn't falter. He didn't even bend his knees, just glided down the center like gravity was a rumor. I ran. I tore through that forest like my soul was on fire. Branches clawed at my face. Thorns tore at my jacket. Mud tried to suck me down. Behind me came the sound of woods splintering, and then the slap of bare feet. Fast, too fast. And then the voice. Not words at first, just a wet, ragged howl that curled my blood. Then, I'm gonna eat you. The scream split the trees, jagged and raw, like an animal trying to speak. My lungs burned, my legs shook. I didn't look back. I couldn't. The sound of his feet was too close, too hungry. I fell once, face first into a thorn bush, blood in my mouth, hands shredded. But I got up. God, I got up because the sound behind me was getting louder, the screaming ripping through the dark like teeth. I didn't stop until the streetlights burned through the black, and I collapsed under their glow, choking on air, shaking so hard I thought I'd splinter apart. Only then did the noise stop, but I could still smell him. Sweat, soil, and something older. Something that didn't belong in a human throat. I didn't sleep. I couldn't. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw him on that long, arms out, mouth yawning like a grave. The next morning, I dragged my best friend out there, broad daylight, and still the place felt wrong, silent, watching. The bridge looked ready to die. Each step made it scream, the planks bowing so deep it felt like the black water was tugging us down. No way anyone could have crossed it without clinging to both rails. But he had, effortless, like the bridge wasn't even there. On the island, nothing. No clothes, no footprints, no sign anyone had stood there in the dark, crucified on a log, waiting. Just the tree twisting in the pale light, roots like veins pushing out of the earth. I swore I would never go back. But then, a few days later, I saw him again. Late afternoon, gray sky sagging low. I was biking past the park when I saw him crouched behind a tree, naked except for a filthy blanket, whispering to the bark like it could hear him. His lips moved too fast for language. His eyes darted when people walked by. Then he looked at me, and those eyes, black and bottomless, pinned me like nails again. I pedaled so hard my lungs tore. Later, I found out the truth. He wasn't a ghost, not a demon, not the thing my mind kept painting in the cracks of the dark. He was a man, escaped from the psychiatric facility a few kilometers away, delusional, dangerous, violent. Police are still looking for him. But here's what eats me alive at night. If he's just a man, why did the bridge hold for him like it feared him? Why was there no sign, no mud, no prints, nothing where he stood on that log with his arms stretched wide like a god of hunger? And why, when the wind cuts through the trees at 3 a.m., do I hear that voice again slithering through the wall, whispering the same promise until my bones ache? I'm gonna eat you. I'm not a people person. Never have been. I'm the kind of person who looks angry when I'm not. The kind who gets accused of glaring when I'm just breathing. Resting bitch face, they call it. I like silence. I like distance. And somehow, that makes me a magnet for the wrong kind of people. The ones who stare too long, smile too wide, linger too close. Sometimes I wonder if there's a neon sign over my head. Here's your soulmate. But only the unstable can see it. Back then, in 1994, Figure skating was my escape. Once out there on the ice, I wasn't Salty the introvert. I was a character cloaked in music and glitter. I could forget myself. I could breathe. Until Clay. The first time I saw him was after a competition in Tulsa. I'd just come off the ice, heart still pounding, blades biting into the rubber mats as I stepped away from the rink. I was waiting for my scores, lost in my own head, when a rink guard leaned down and whispered, "Salty, there's a man out here who wants your autograph." For a second, I thought he was joking. An autograph for me? We were amateurs. Nobody cared about us. But there he was, by the gate, clutching a battered spiral notebook. He was tall, blond, decent looking in a way that would have been harmless if not for the eyes. Ice blue, bright as polished glass, unblinking. "I'm Clay," he said, his voice like a practice radio host, smooth, too friendly. "I really love your Star Wars spotlight. My niece skated earlier, but I just stayed to watch you compete. Saw you in Houston and Fort Worth." That froze me more than the rink ever could. Houston? Fort Worth? How did he remember me? I smiled because that's what you do when someone knows your name and you're alone and the exit feels too far away. I signed his notebook. "To Clay, my first ever autograph. Thanks, big wishes, Salty." He grinned, teeth too perfect. His eyes never moved from mine, never even flickered to the page. It was when he said, "I love your spotlight program," that the chill crawled up my spine. My spotlight routine was different. The Imperial March. I skated in a full Darth Vader costume, helmet and all. No one should have known what I looked like, not unless they studied me closely. "How did you recognize me?" I laughed, a brittle sound. "Oh," he said, "I just knew. Chelsea and I are Star Wars super fans. Chelsea's my niece. She loved you. We both did." I glanced around for a little girl. There was none. "She got a bronze," he added. "Went home already. But me, I stayed for you." He leaned closer. His breath was warm, sour with something I couldn't name. "You were brave," he whispered, "to skate in that mask." That should have been the end of it. Just a weird encounter with an overeager fan, but then he kept talking about how he hated other girls' programs. Too cheerful, too revealing. "Bikini on the ice," he spat, lip curling. His voice dropped lower. "There are kids here. It's disgusting." I nodded, pretending to agree. My chest felt tight. My eyes darted toward the locker rooms. "I'll watch your other events tonight," he said. His grin never touched his eyes. "Cheer you on." I forced another laugh. "That's nice. Thanks." When I walked away, I felt it. The weight of his stare, heavy as chains on my back. The evening dragged like a bad dream. My nerves made me clumsy. By the time results were posted, I'd taken silver. I should have been happy, but as I checked the board, a voice cut through the crowd, high and too loud. "Salty! Salty!" Every head turned. Clay stood at the far end of the rink, leaning so far over the railing, his torso nearly crossed it, waving both arms like a man drowning. His voice echoed, bright and sharp as broken glass. Yay, salty! I held up my medal because what else could I do? My face burned. His eyes, they didn't just watch, they devoured. That night, he called the competition desk, left messages. Then the hotel had them ring my room, leave voicemails. Dinner with me, Chelsea, and her parents. Except Chelsea had gone home. He said that himself. I never answered. The hotel never gave out my room number, thank God. 3 days later, an envelope showed up at my rink. My name scrawled across it like a threat. Inside were 2 photos. One was me in full Vader gear, mid-spin, taken from the stands. The second made my stomach heave. A podium shot from the U.S. Nationals, except Nancy Kerrigan's head was gone. In its place, my face crudely taped on. Above it in red marker, Salty, 1994 Olympic gold medalist. A heart drawn around me. My phone felt heavy when I picked it up. I thought about calling the police, but what would I say? He hadn't broken any laws. Not yet. Still, my hands wouldn't stop shaking because I knew what stalkers do when they're done waiting. 4th of July weekend, my rink's tournament. I saw him the second I walked in, standing by the registration desk, his smile stretched too wide. When he saw me, it cracked open into something feral. You lied to me. He lunged before anyone could move. His hand clamped around mine, cold and damp. He yanked it up, shoving my bare ring finger toward my husband like proof. You didn't tell me about him. Clay's face twisted, spit flying. You used me to cheat. The lobby went silent. Skaters froze mid-step. Coaches stared. My husband, sweet, mild-mannered, nearly broke his jaw. Security swarmed, dragged him out as he screamed about our connection, his voice warping into something inhuman. The last letter came a week later. Pages of bile, accusation, filth. Words that slithered across the paper like veins. You led me on. You wanted this. You'll regret choosing him over me. You know, I think about and wonder if he's still out there, waiting. And then I remember something that makes my blood run cold. That second photo, the one with Nancy Kerrigan's face cut off. It wasn't a clean cut. The paper was ragged at the edges, torn like it had been ripped from something else. Like a photo frame, like a wall, like a shrine. Clay, let's not meet, ever. I don't know why that Ouija board was even in my cousin Zach's closet, buried under a heap of musty jackets, their zippers rusted and fabric frayed, as if the house itself wanted it hidden. It was the summer I was 14, dumped at my aunt and uncle's for a weekend while my parents escaped their own troubles. I was rummaging through Zach's closet, bored out of my mind, when my fingers brushed against something smooth and cold beneath the pile. I tugged it free, the box heavy in my hands, its faded edges whispering of age and neglect. My pulse quickened as I read the words etched across the top. Ouija. My skin prickled like the air itself had thickened, watching me. Is this real? I asked, holding it up like I unearthed some cursed relic. Zach barely glanced over, slouched on his bed, scrolling through his phone. Yeah, I guess. Got it years ago. Used it once or twice, but it's just junk. Nothing happened. His voice was flat, but there was a flicker in his eyes. Something he wasn't saying. I opened the box, the hinges creaking like a warning. The board gleamed under the dim bedroom light, its lacquered surface smooth as bone, the yellowed letters stark against the dark wood, the planchette that nestled inside, its pointed edges like a claw waiting to scratch at something unseen. My fingers lingered on it, and a shiver crawled up my spine. Not excitement, but something heavier, like dread masquerading as a thrill. Can I have it? I asked, my voice too eager, betraying the unease coiling in my gut. Zach snorted, indifferent. Take it. I don't mess with that stuff. My aunt overheard, her face twisting as she passed the doorway. Please, get that thing out of my house, she said, her voice sharp, like she was spitting out a curse. Her eyes lingered on the board, and for a moment, I thought I saw fear. That only made me want it more. When I got home, I showed it to my friends, Sam, Ellie, Tara, and Brian. We huddled in my basement, the board sprawled out on the floor like an altar. The air felt wrong, heavy with the smell of damp concrete and something else, something sour I couldn't place. We whispered about ghosts, spirits, demons, things we didn't understand but craved to touch. The board promised answers, a gateway to the dark corners we were too young to name but old enough to fear. We decided then and there we'd make contact. At first, it was a game. We'd sneak the boards to abandoned places, crumbling houses with broken windows, the shadowed edges of the woods, the rusted skeleton of an old train yard behind Sam's house. We'd ask the same tired questions. Is there someone here? Can you give us a sign? Most nights, nothing happened. The planchette would sit still, mocking our whispers. But sometimes it moved, a twitch under our fingers, a slow drag across the board. Sometimes a cold breath would slither between us, raising goosebumps. Sometimes the night just felt wrong, like the darkness was listening too closely. Brian was different from the rest of us. Where we played, he hungered. His eyes would light up when we pulled out the board, his fingers trembling as they hovered over the planchette. He didn't just want to play, he needed it, like it was oxygen and he was drowning. It started small. He lingered after we packed up, staring at the board like it was whispering to him alone. He talked about it constantly, his voice low and fervent, like a preacher reciting scripture. I should have seen it then, the way his obsession grew, sharp and jagged, like a blade being boned. We gathered in the woods after school, the board balanced on someone's knee as the sun bled into the horizon. The air would turn cold, the kind of cold that sinks into your bones. We'd placed our fingers on the planchette, barely touching it, and asked, "Who's here? What's your name? How did you die?" Most times it was us, pushing the planchette, feeding off each other's nervous energy. But sometimes it answered in ways that didn't make sense. It spelt out names we didn't know. Jacob, who drowned in the river 20 years ago. Missy, who only ever spelled, "Help me," in frantic loops. Richard, who claimed he was murdered but wouldn't say by whom. We started keeping a notebook cataloging our spirits, their stories scrawled in shaky handwriting. Each name felt like a secret we weren't meant to know, a door we shouldn't have opened. Brian changed. He stopped being one of us and became something else, something tethered to the board. He was always the first to arrive, the last to leave, his eyes glassy, his voice too quiet. He started begging to take the board home. "Just for the weekend," he'd plead, his hands twitching. "I'll bring it back Monday, I swear." It was my board, meant to stay at my house, but his desperation was a physical thing, pressing against me. I gave in. Monday came, and the board didn't. Brian showed up at school looking like a ghost himself, skin pale as ash, eyes sunken with dark rings, fingers twitching like they were still on the planchette. What's wrong with you?" I asked, half laughing, expecting a joke. He stared at me, his eyes hollow. "It came to my house," he said, his voice barely a whisper. "One of them. I don't know who, but I woke up and my room was trashed. My desk was flipped, my posters ripped, my closet door wide open. I didn't do it, I swear." I laughed, thinking he was messing with me. "Yeah, sure, Brian." But his face didn't crack, didn't waver. "Come see for yourself." We rode our bikes to his house after school, expecting a prank. The second I stepped into his room, my stomach plummeted. It was worse than he'd said. His mattress hung half off the bed frame, sheets tangled like something had clawed through them. Books were scattered across the floor, pages torn. His mirror was shattered, not cracked, but shattered. Glass shards glinting on his desk like teeth. The worst was his closet door. Scratched into the wood, deep and jagged, were words: Missy, Jacob, Richard. Our spirits' name carved like a warning. I couldn't breathe. The air felt thick, like it was pressing down on me, watching. Then Brian lifted his shirt, his stomach, his ribs, his chest. They were covered in thin, angry red scratches, like someone had dragged a needle across the skin. And there, just below his ribs, was a word carved in shallow, bloody lines: Missy. "She did this," he whispered, his voice trembling. She was standing at the foot of my bed last night, just watching." We stood there frozen, the silence screaming in our ears. Even Sam, the skeptic, couldn't explain it. Over the next few weeks, Brian got worse. He was paranoid, jumpy, his eyes darting like he expected something to lunge from the shadows. He'd mutter about the board, about voices in the night, about things moving, breaking. "They're following me," he'd say, his voice barely audible. "I hear them. I see them." We stopped inviting him to play. We stopped using the board altogether. It was too much, too heavy. We told ourselves he was faking it, that his obsession was just a performance. But deep down, I knew it wasn't. One afternoon, Brian showed up at my house, wild-eyed and breathless. "Come with me, now." I didn't want to, but his desperation pulled me along. We biked to the woods where we used to play, the board already there, set up in a circle of our friends. They looked uneasy, like they'd been coerced. "One last time," Brian said, his voice raw. "I need to talk to them." We sat, hesitant, our fingers on the planchette. The air felt wrong, too still, like the woods were holding their breath. "Who's here?" Brian asked, his voice shaking. The planchette jerked, spelling Missy. Brian's breath hitched. "What do you want? Why me?" The air grew colder, heavier. The planchette moved again, slow and deliberate. "You called." Brian started shaking, his fingers trembling, then his whole body. He convulsed, his head snapping back, his eyes rolling. Someone gasped, someone cursed. Then he went still, slumping forward. When he looked up, it wasn't Brian. His eyes were wrong, too wide, too empty. His mouth twisted into a slow, unnatural grin. "She's here," he said, his voice low, guttural, not his own. Then he pulled out a knife. It appeared from nowhere, a rusty hunting knife, its blade glinting in the fading light. We froze, the air thick with terror. He lunged the knife, slashing inches from Sam's face. We screamed, scrambling back, dirt kicking up from under our feet. I ran. We all ran, leaving Brian and the board behind. We told our parents everything. The board, the names, Brian's obsession, the knife. They didn't believe us at first. Not until they saw Brian's room. The scratches, the shattered mirror, the knife with blood on its blade. Brian's parents grounded him, took away everything. Phone, TV, friends. He denied it all, said we were lying to get him in trouble. But his parents found the board, the knife, the truth carved into his closet door. They gave the board back to my dad, who drove it to my aunt's house and left it without a word. She shoved it back into the closet, her face pale, her hands shaking. I never saw it again. I never played again. Brian never spoke to us after that. He avoided us at school, his eyes hollow, his face a mask. He never asked for the board back, never mentioned it. That scared me more than anything. The way he let it go, like it wasn't his choice anymore. I wonder if he ever escaped whatever took a hold of him in those woods, or if it's still there waiting, carved into his skin, his soul, like those names on his closet door. The summer sun hung heavy over my aunt's house, its golden rays slanting through the big windows, pooling on the hardwood floor that spilled honey. It was one of those days that should have been perfect, lazy, carefree, the kind you'd remember fondly years later. But the air had a weight to it, a faint sourness I couldn't place, like milk just starting to turn. I was babysitting my cousin Adam, as I often did when our moms took off for their afternoon rituals of shopping or brunch, their laughter fading as they pulled out of the driveway. Adam, a scrawny sixth grader with a mop of dark hair, worshiped me like I was some kind of rock star. I was a freshman, full of myself, and his wide-eyed admiration fed my ego. Babysitting him was never a chore. Video games, football in the backyard, raiding the fridge for contraband snacks. No rules, no bedtime, just us, kings of a fleeting kingdom. That day started like any other. I clapped Adam on the shoulder as our moms vanished down the street. "What's the plan, dude? Halo? Call of Duty?" His grin was all teeth, pure kid energy. COD for sure. We sank into the couch, the TV's glow washing over us, controllers buzzing in our hands. The house was warm, the smell of cut grass drifting in, and we traded insults between rounds. Adam getting cocky when he landed a lucky shot. It was perfect. Too perfect, maybe. Like the world was holding its breath, waiting to exhale something foul. I got up to grab snacks, my stomach rumbling as I pictured the junk food haul I'd assembled. The kitchen was bright, the fridge humming softly, but as I reached for the handle, something shifted. You know the feeling, when the air thickens and your skin prickles like you're being watched. My hand froze midair, my pulse ticking up. I glanced at the back door, its curtain fluttering faintly, though the door was shut tight. Nothing looked wrong, but that sensation clawed at the back of my neck, sharp and insistent. I stepped closer, peering through the glass. The alley between the houses was empty, just trash bins lined up against the fence, baking in the heat. Still, I reached up and turned the lock, the click louder than it should have been. Shaking it off, I turned back to the fridge, grabbing a pack of string cheese. Then I saw him. Through the window over the sink, a man stood outside, close enough that his shadow seemed to spill into the room. His hair was matted, a greasy tangle that clung to his scalp like wet moss. His clothes were so filthy they looked like they'd been dredged from a swamp, the colors long lost to grime. His eyes were sunken, dark pits that seemed to swallow the light. He wasn't looking at me. He was staring into the living room at Adam, who was still glued to the game, oblivious. The man's face was blank, a mask of wax, but there was something to his stillness, a hunger, a purpose that made my blood turn to ice. I didn't move. My brain stalled, refusing to process the sight. The cheese slipped from my hand, hitting the counter with a dull thud. The man raised a hand, slow as death, and pressed it to the window. His fingers left greasy streaks on the glass, curling slightly, like he was testing its strength. My heart lurched. I grabbed the nearest thing, a heavy meat tenderizer from the dish rack, its weight cold and solid in my palm. My other hand fumbled for my phone as I backed away, forcing my steps to stay slow. Running would mean panic. Panic would mean he'd know I saw him. I made it to the living room, my voice a strained parody of calm. "Hey, Adam, let's go upstairs for a bit, man." He barely glanced up, thumbs hammering the controller. "What? Why?" "Just, let's switch it up. My back's cramping on this couch." He groaned but paused the game, tossing the controller down. I kept my eyes on the kitchen as we moved to the stairs. The man still there, still watching Adam, his head tilted slightly like a predator catching a scent. At the front door, I turned the deadbolt, the sound too loud in the quiet house. How many doors had I left unlocked? How many ways could he get in? We climbed the stairs, my pulse a drumbeat in my throat. I ushered Adam into his bedroom, shutting and locking the door. He noticed the tenderizer in my hand, his eyes widening, fear creeping into his voice. What's wrong?" I didn't sugarcoat it. I wanted him scared, scared enough to listen. "There's a man outside. I saw him at the kitchen window. He was watching you." Adam's face drained of color, his mouth opening soundlessly. "We're gonna be fine," I said, forcing steadiness into my voice. "I'm calling the cops. We stay quiet, keep the lights off, and wait." He nodded, his trust in me absolute, even as his hands shook. I slid down against the door, bracing my legs, the tenderizer heavy in my lap. I dialed 911, my voice low as I explained. A man outside, looking in, homeless looking, filthy, white guy with stringy hair. The dispatcher's calm questions grounded me. Address, locked doors, our safety. Stay where you are, officers are on the way. I hung up to call my mom, but she didn't answer. I tried again, my thumb trembling over the screen. Then it came, a sharp, unmistakable crash of breaking glass. Adam jumped, a small whimper escaping him. I froze, every nerve screaming. Footsteps followed, heavy and deliberate, moving through the kitchen, slow like he was savoring the invasion. Adam whispered, his voice barely audible. "He's in the house." I didn't answer, just gripping the tenderizer tighter, its edges biting into my palm. The footsteps prowled through the dining room, unhurried, methodical. I hit call on my mom's number again. This time she picked up, her voice bright and distracted. "Hey, sweetie, what's up?" "Mom," I hissed, "there's someone in the house. He broke in. I called the cops. We're in Adam's room." Silence, then a sharp, "What?" I repeated it, quieter now, as the footsteps reached the stairs. "We're coming home. Hide. Stay quiet." I hung up, my eyes locked on the door. Adam was shaking but moved with purpose, digging a pocket knife out from his desk drawer. He flipped it open, his face set like that tiny blade could rewrite our fate. I almost laughed, the absurdity cutting through the terror. "You ever use that, bud?" "No," he admitted, but his grip was steady. "Stay behind me," I said. "If this goes bad, I'll need you ready." The footsteps climbed the stairs, each creak a nail in my spine. They paused at the top, then turned left toward the bathroom. Water ran, a slow, deliberate trickle, like he was toying with the faucet. Silence followed, thick and oppressive. Then the footsteps moved again, into the master bedroom. A closet door opened, shut. Drawers slid, one after another. What was he doing? Robbing the place? Or was he looking for something, someone specific? The footsteps returned to the hallway, closer now, right outside Adam's door. We heard him breathe, a wet, ragged sound, like he was tasting the air. My body recoiled, ready to spring. The tenderizer felt like an extension of my arm, heavy with intent. The breathing lingered, then faded as the footsteps moved away. Sirens pierced the silence, distant but growing louder. Car doors slammed outside, voices barking commands. The police had arrived, their presence loud, unapologetic. Their footsteps downstairs quickened, panicked. The front door creaked, then slammed shut. More voices, more movement. A scuffle erupted. Grunt, shout, the thud of bodies. Then silence. A knock at the bedroom door. "All clear, boys. You can come out." I unlocked it, my hands trembling. A tall officer stood there, his badge glinting in the dim hallway. He smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "You okay?" We nodded, Adam still clutching his knife, his face pale as bone. Downstairs, chaos reigned. The kitchen window was a jagged wound, glass scattered across the counter. My mom and aunt burst through the door, their faces wild with fear. Mom grabbed me, her grip bruising, scanning me for injuries. "You're okay," I said, but my voice felt distant, like it belonged to someone else. Adam's mom crushed him in a hug, muttering prayers and curses. The cop had the man in cuffs by the squad car, but I couldn't look at him. I didn't want to see those sunken eyes. I didn't want to give him the satisfaction of my fear. A younger officer, his lip bloodied, approached. He's an escapee from a psychiatric hospital in Manitoba. Violent history. Been breaking into houses, squatting. You're lucky he's not making sense, but we've got him. My mom scoffed, her voice sharp. He wasn't squatting. He was after her boys. The officer's face tightened, but he didn't argue. They took him away, the sirens fading into the night. We didn't stay in that house. My aunt and Adam came to ours, camping out in the living room. The TVs flicker, a poor shield against the dark. Nobody slept. The next day, my aunt installed a security system. Double locks, motion lights, a new window. But locks don't stop men like that. The thought gnawed at me, keeping me awake for weeks. Every creak was his boots on the stairs. Every shadow his greasy hand on the glass. Summer ended and life moved on, but Adam never spoke of it. Neither did I. He started sleeping with that pocket knife under his pillow, and I didn't blame him. The fear lingered, a stain we couldn't scrub out. 3 months later, I found it, tucked in the back of my closet, behind a pile of old sneakers, was a small folded piece of paper. My hands shook as I opened it. The handwriting was jagged, scrawled in smudged ink. "I'll come back for him. You can't keep him safe." At the bottom, a greasy fingerprint pressed into the page, like a promise. My blood ran cold. I'd locked every door, checked every window. But somehow, he'd been inside my room, before the cops, before the sirens. And the worst part, the note wasn't about Adam. It was about me. And that, dear listeners, brings a close to these true scary stories. I would like to take a moment and acknowledge the rest of the members of Back to Ashes. Thank you for your continued support. And as I always like to say, if it weren't for you, I would not have a voice and this channel would not exist. I cannot thank you enough. If you are new to the channel and you have liked what you've heard so far, please leave a like and a comment. And if you would like to join the Back to Ashes family, please hit that subscribe button and set your notification bell to all. The way you'll be reminded of every time I upload a video. If you are sleeping, I hope Slumberland is treating you comfortably. If you're awake, I hope you've enjoyed this collection. Until next time, please stay vigilant and take care of yourselves. I'll be reading to you soon. Have yourselves a good morning, a good afternoon, or a good evening. Peace, love, and light to you all.